Hey, James, it's Clinton Noah from Great American Sports Network. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, we're so good, and we're just so glad to have you on today, man. How's everything going in your world? I know you're always keeping busy over there.
Oh, man, I'm staying busy. You're right. I'm staying busy.
Well, you know what, James? It's August. We've got college football coming up this month, NFL preseason, training camp. It's all coming together. I know this is a exciting time for you as it is for us. When football season's on the horizon, we all get a little bit excited, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, as we kind of go through this and look at kind of what you've done in your career, I just want to kind of go back kind of to the beginning for you, because you started your college career at Central Washington before moving on to Washington State. I'm just going to talk about your college career, being recruited as a high school athlete and going to college, because obviously, Washington State at the time, although you did play for Dennis Erickson, I believe, for a season, was not the program maybe they became later in later years, and now certainly under Mike Leach. But talk about your transition going from kind of a smaller college to Washington State, and then drafted by the Jets in 1988, man.
Well, for me, it started out at Central, where we would catch 15-hour bus rides to games. And so I learned to appreciate the game of football, because every game we played, we pretty much caught the bus, right, until we finally made the playoffs and the national playoffs. And then for the first time in the school's history, we were able to actually get on a plane for the first time.
Wow.
So that was pretty unique. But I felt like there was an opportunity for me to move on. I wanted to attend Washington State University, and of course I walked on there. And Dennis Erickson wasn't the coach at the time. Jim Walden was the head coach at the time. And it's funny because when I played at Central, we had to buy our own football shoes. And so when I first got into town, I went to the sports store in Pullman and bought my own cleats. And needless to say, when I get into the meeting with the coach, he tells me to go down and meet with the equipment manager, and he's going to give me my equipment to start the season and start the practice. And lo and behold, they give me a pair of shoes. So I'm thinking, oh man, this is excellent. I got a free pair of shoes. Well, let me just take the shoes that I have back to the sports store and get my money back. So of course I go back to the sports store and get my money back. The next day I go to practice, and I go to my locker, and I'm looking, I'm like, wait a minute, I know my locker was here. Well, all my gear is gone now. Right? So I go to the equipment guy, and I said, hey, Jack, his name was Jack Trumbull. I said, Jack, where's my equipment gear? He goes, oh, yeah, we don't appreciate guys selling shoes back to the sports store when we give you shoes. So lo and behold, they thought that those free pair of shoes that they gave me, that I had went and took them back to the sports store, and they literally had kicked me off the team for a day.
Wow.
So, of course, I went up to Coach Walden, and I said, Coach, hey, I got my receipt right here. He goes, oh, okay, well, and he puts in his book about how I walked in his office one day, and out of nowhere, I just showed up, and I ended up being this hell of a player. But I thought it was comical because Coach Walden almost kicked me off the team the first day I joined the team. So it went on to be a very frustrating college career for me, because I played receiver, and when I came to WSU, I was a receiver. They moved me to defense because I didn't know how to go around the defensive backs. I tried to go through them. And so they put me on defense, and I was crushed. I was devastated. I sat the bench my entire junior year. Finally, my senior year came around, and I was able to play, but I was actually injured when we played Colorado, and the guy that injured me was a little running back by the name of Eric Bieniemy.
Wow.
Eric Bieniemy actually twisted my ankle somehow on a blocking play, and it took me out for like a game and a half or so. And that was my first interaction with Eric Bieniemy. It's funny because I just saw Eric Bieniemy probably a couple of months ago up at the NFL Combine. So he and I go way, way back. But long story short, then I had a workout for my pro day with a guy by the name of Marv Sunderland. Marv was a longtime scout in the NFL for like 40-plus years. He's a guy that I still stay in contact with to this day. He's like a father figure to me. And Marv had me run out when there was snow along the side of the field in the spring, and I happened to run really fast a couple times for Marv. And unbeknownst to me, Marv went back to the New York Jets and basically virtually stood on top of a table to say, hey, we need to draft this guy, James Hasty. When Mel Kiper had me going in the 12th round, It was through people like Mark Sunderland that got me drafted in the 3rd round to the New York Jets, and I ended up starting my first preseason game, and the rest was history.
Talk a little bit about your time with the Jets. You play with some great players. Ronnie Lott in that secondary, that had to be huge playing alongside him. Boomer Esiason, Al Toon, Art Monk for a year, Rob Moore, Mo Lewis, Ken O'Brien, Freeman McNeil, Mark Gastineau was there his last year during your rookie year. In '94, you played for Pete Carroll. Just talk a little bit more about the experience of being in the NFL, being that 3rd-round pick, and playing for the New York Jets.
Well, the New York Jets was an organization that was pretty much in disarray. I mean, they did not have a general manager, so what they had was a group. It was by committee, pretty much. You know, you had your player personnel, and you had your head coach, and then, of course, you had a somewhat of a GM-like figure, and a president, but nobody was really calling the shots. And so that really showed when it came to the field, because we really didn't have someone that was good when it came to selecting the players that we needed each year. And that's why I really appreciated my opportunity and my time with Kansas City, because when you have somebody that's a storied general manager like Carl Peterson, who knew what the heck he was doing when he was building that program with a head coach like Marty Schottenheimer, that's why you saw the program, the difference in those two organizations. But with New York, it was, constant turnover. Head coaching changes were tough. Pete Carroll, as you know, was a defensive coordinator with me for several years and taught me a lot about the game. Someone that I'm indebted to this day for teaching me to play the game the right way. And of course, we all know the kind of energy that Pete Carroll has, and it's truly genuine. But there were people that, of course, I don't speak too highly of people like Boomer Esiason. Boomer Esiason was a guy that the Jets brought in. I happen to be a guy that they tagged one particular year. Unbeknownst to me, the Cincinnati Bengals made an offer to me. Basically, it referenced paragraph 5. Paragraph 5 was the base salary that the team had to match the base salary. Yeah. Well, that particular year, Boomer Esiason comes in and restructures his paragraph 5, which is his base salary, and removes $1 million out of his base salary, which ultimately impacted me and forced me back to the Jets. Wow. So I don't think too highly of people like Boomer Esiason. I'll be quite honest with you, because he cost me a significant amount of money, and he prevented me from being able to move on and further my career. So there's guys like Freeman McNeil that I cherish my playing days with him to this day. He's a great man, a great individual. I've been keeping up with Mark Gastineau. I'm struggling to see how his health is coming along. I'm praying for him. I know that he's going through some tough times right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, New York was a tough time. It was a tough experience. But I appreciated those years with Kansas City, because when you have someone like a Derrick Thomas or a Neil Smith, or you're playing with someone like a Dale Carter, where you've got a lockdown corner on the other side, it helps your career tremendously. Because while I was in New York, it was like virtually every year I had another corner on the other side of the field. And so it limited my opportunities. And so when you see guys like, Ty Law going into the Hall of Fame, I think Ty was a heck of a player. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know if Ty Law was a Hall of Fame player, because I saw Ty Law play every year. And he wouldn't, in my mind, he's not a caliber of a guy that I would say, oh, yeah, he's right away, he's a Hall of Famer. I think he was a hell of a corner. I think he found himself in a good situation with the organization that he was with, the New England Patriots. And I think those things help as far as his career is concerned.
No, I agree with you there. Systems that fit players, and you just kind of get lucky in the situation you fall into. That definitely helps. And I was going through some of those Jets rosters, and like you said, a new corner almost every single year. And I was looking at that, and like, you're the mainstay, and you got this new guy coming in every year. That's got to be tough. But we move on from your time with the Jets. 95, you signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. I kind of want to talk about some of the teammates that you played with the Jets. Kind of looks like the Chiefs brought some guys over there. Louis Aguiar comes in 94. You played with him with the Jets. Brian Washington, Jeff Criswell come over. also in '95, the three of you come over from the Jets, and Carl Peterson, the Raiders were trying to sign you. Carl Peterson said we simply wouldn't let him leave until the deal was done. We had to sign James Hasty, contrary to what one person may believe. Not everyone wants to be a Raider. So just talk about your time signing with the Kansas City Chiefs, coming over from the Jets.
Well, it was interesting because before I met with the Chiefs, I had a visit with the Oakland Raiders, and I sat down with Al Davis for several hours. And unbeknownst to me, it was at that time while I was visiting Al and the Raiders that I later discovered that other teams were looking for me. And lo and behold, Al convinced me to go to a Laker game, and he kept me in LA for more than a day or two that I had planned. And I guess the whole intention was to prevent other teams from signing me, as I found out later on. And fortunately enough for me, I was later contacted by the Chiefs, and I ended up going out there for a visit. And I was told right away, they said, "Hey, look, we're going to bring you in, and you're going to be starting on the other side of Dale Carter." Well, as soon as we get to minicamp, all of a sudden I noticed is that Mark Collins, who was starting out there with Dale Carter, was playing corner. Now all of a sudden they're telling me, "Well, we're going to rotate you guys in." So it got off to a rough start when I first joined the Chiefs. That what they told me kind of was quite not what it ended up being. But long story short, Dell and I had great chemistry. Mark ended up moving into safety, and we pretty much changed the way that Gunther wanted to play the defense, because Gunther wanted to play a more of an off coverage like cover four, because at that time the Dallas Cowboys were running cover four and were having a lot of success, and so everybody was jumping on this cover four coverage, but they were playing it more from an off technique standpoint. Well, when Dale and I started playing it, we decided we didn't want to play off, because the guy that was on the strong side of the defense could always be exploited with go routes or post routes, because the safety may not be in the middle of the field. So we decided, hey man, let's just play man to man, okay, on these guys all the time. And we virtually convinced Gunther Cunningham and Kurt Schottenheimer to let us just play man to man virtually every down. And that's what we ended up doing. And that allowed us to be successful, because when you had guys like Derrick Thomas and Neil Smith coming off the edge, that pressure was a lot for quarterbacks to withstand.
James, we've had the pleasure in recent times of talking with receivers. Joey Galloway played for the Seahawks, and also Rod Smith, who played for the Broncos, two tremendous receivers, and both of them said the same thing, that the Chiefs were the most physical, secondary that they ever faced between you and Dale Carter. I know going up against those guys. I mean, what kind of when you hear things like that from people like that all these years later, what does that mean to you, especially considering the fact that you and Dale Carter basically changed the defense to meet your strengths? I mean, that's got to be high praise coming from those kind of players.
Oh, well, I think it's definitely appreciative. I mean, those guys are hell of a players. Rod Smith, God knows, he really turned into a hell of a player, and I consider that guy a Hall of Fame player. But when you look at some of the other Hall of Famers, the Tim Browns, when you look at Andre Reed, even Shannon Sharp, Shannon Sharp got locked down. He can say all he wants, but when he played against us, he did not have a field day against the Chiefs. And, it was because we would change the style of play. We didn't just get up on guys and play physical all the time. We had the ability to play 3 or 4 yards off the receiver and change up the way that the man-to-man technique was played, which is something they weren't accustomed to seeing. So it was an unorthodox style of man-to-man that they hadn't seen before, which made them very uncomfortable. And it made them play out of the norm, which was something that they weren't accustomed to doing. Even a guy like Michael Irvin, he expected you to be right up on him in his face, but if you played him off about 3 or 4 yards, he wasn't accustomed to you playing with that amount of distance between a corner. And it was very unorthodox for him, and he struggled against man-to-man as well when we played that way. So it was a style of play that we implemented. It wasn't necessarily that we were just super physical with guys, because you couldn't be physical with a guy like Shannon Sharp, because he'll throw you around. But if you played an unorthodox style that John Elway wasn't accustomed to seeing, then he wasn't going to go to Shannon, because he didn't know what coverage I would be playing at that particular time. So we mixed it up. We got physical. We played off. We changed up the style of play, and I think that was what led us to be successful.
Well, James, kind of go into this big game in 1995 against the Raiders. You have a big interception. Ref gets in the way of Tim Brown. At least that's what he claims. 11 on 11, we win that game. That's what Tim Brown says. But you make that pick, run it back for a touchdown, win the game. I mean, everyone is just mobbing you. It's a dog pile. Marty comes over, kisses you on the forehead. Then Marty grabs Neil Smith and screams, "I told you they'd bleep and fold." Just kind of talk about that, the game-winning interception, the team mobbing you down there kind of struggling to breathe as they're dogpiling on you, and then Marty giving you the kiss on the forehead.
Right. Well, the kiss on the forehead was bittersweet. In light of how Marty's doing now, man, it's something I'll cherish for a long, long time because he's a great, great man. But as far as a particular play, Tim Brown, as talented a receiver as he was, he struggled getting off the line of scrimmage versus man-to-man. And so what Gruden and Bugle and a lot of these guys would do is they run shallow crossers, and it was their way of trying to rub the defender off by kind of running into you with another receiver. And so that's pretty much how Tim Brown made the Hall of Fame, was running drag routes. And you could tell him I said that. But for the most part, he did. He ran a lot of drag routes. Tim Brown was not a vertical receiver. He was a shallow crosser, pick route, starburst type of routes where everybody's kind of rubbing off receivers, and then Tim would be the guy that they're obviously targeting the ball with. But I mean, that's just what you do. If you know that his strengths aren't getting off the line of scrimmage, then you're going to find a way to make sure you get him the ball, because once he gets the ball in his hand, he can do some things, but his strength wasn't getting off the line of scrimmage. So, knowing that he's going to run that route because that's his go-to route, I was anticipating that shallow crosser, and I know from film review that they oftentimes would try to use the receiver or they would try to use the umpire, which is the gentleman that's a few yards behind the defensive line, as a guy that would rub off the defender. And so I kind of took a peek as I was crossing with him at the quarterback, and I could tell that Rich was the quarterback. I believe was Rich Gannon. I'm not sure if it was or not, but I think it was Rich Gannon. No, it wasn't Rich Gannon.
Hostetler, Jeff Hostetler.
It was Hostetler. Rich Gannon was with us at that time. And so I could tell Hostetler was still his eyes were still anticipating us to be running. So I continued to run, knowing that Tim had somehow gotten hit by someone, and I wasn't sure who it was at the time. But I continued to follow Hostetler's eyes, and as I ran with his eye and followed his eyes, lo and behold, he threw it. And then I just knew there was only one person I had to beat, and I knew that was Napoleon Kaufman. If I could get to that end zone, I knew I had a chance to end the game, and that was pretty much the goal.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one that sticks out in our memories of our childhood growing up watching the Chiefs. And kind of going with that theme, the kiss on the forehead. In 96, next year, you pick up a fumble recovery, 80-yard return for a touchdown. And instead of the kiss, Marty went down there. He said, I went down there, I looked at him, he looked at me, and I just shook his hand. You came back grinning, said, he told me I'm not going to kiss you this time. I said I was cool with that. And you said that Derrick made the play. I'm just... was fortunate enough to be the guy that was there. I was blitzing. They tried to man block Derrick on one side, and that's just not going to happen. So kind of take us through that and how you guys kind of remembered the kiss, just did the handshake this time.
Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. Being on the field, playing with a guy like Derrick Thomas, who virtually would call out safeties. You knew he was going to be around that quarterback at any given time. A tremendous friend of mine, someone that I had a chance to visit with right after his accident that we know around Super Bowl weekend. Mm-hmm. I flew down to Miami, and actually the best experience ever was, he's going into surgery, and they won't let anybody in to see him. And then all of a sudden they say, hey, you can go in. And I said, well, really, I can go in? He goes, yeah, you can go in. So I catch him coming out of one surgical room to go into another. And he said that let James in. He's like a brother to me. And I'll never forget that statement when the doctor said I could go in because of what he said. And, of course, we got a chance to share a couple of days together after that injury, and we kind of talked, and he told me where I needed to go hang out and have a good time at strip clubs, of course. And we laughed about it. We laughed about it the next day. And then, lo and behold, my biggest regret is, he told me I should go to the Pro Bowl that year, and I went. And then, of course, he ended up passing away. Shortly there after the Pro Bowl week. But Derrick Thomas was a guy that you knew when he stepped on the field, he was gonna, he was going to get around the quarterback. Did he always do everything right? None of us did. We all made mistakes, and but that's someone that I was greatly impacted by leaving the Kansas City Chiefs, because I asked Carl to release me. I didn't. They were shocked when they called me and said, "Hey, we need you to restructure your contract." And I said, "Man, I don't have it in my heart anymore." And big part of that was because of the fact that Derrick was no longer around. Dale Carter was no longer around, and I saw that the organization was going into a rebuild mode. And so I said, "Man, look, I've been taking these injections in my toe every game to numb it up because I had bone spurs." And then I said, I just don't have the fire in me anymore. So if you guys need to just go ahead and release me. So I walked away, and I've never really recovered, ever since Derrick passed on.
Wow.
Well, James, kind of talk about this, because obviously we talked kind of before about, obviously, we've made this film for Marty Schottenheimer. We just visited with him a year ago, and just talk about him as a person and a coach, because we had 13 former players that came on and talked about what he meant and how his attention to detail, the way he was with all sides of the ball. Just kind of talk about him as a mentor and as a person for you, and playing for him for 3 seasons. 4 seasons.
It was about 4 seasons. Marty meant a great deal to me, because he was the first coach that I truly knew every aspect of the game. Like when I was with Pete Carroll, I know Pete Carroll knew defense. I know he knew the offense, but I know he probably didn't know the special teams as well, right? And of course, I came in the league and I had a guy by the name of Bud Carson, who was the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator when they won those Super Bowls. So I've been around some great coaches, but Marty Schottenheimer was the first coach that I ever been around who knew every aspect of the game. And I mean, he would be in the offensive meetings, he'd be in the defensive meetings, he'd be in the special teams meetings. I mean, he knew every aspect of the game. And the one thing that I liked the most about Marty is that he treated you as a man. He would challenge you. There's no question about that. He would challenge you to be better than you were. But he always treated you respectfully, and he always treated you as a man. And I can't tell you how many times, I've played for coaches that think they can talk down to you, i.e. Ron Zook, right? A guy like Ron Zook, he came from, I don't even know where the hell they found Ron Zook. But he came in and he would talk down to us as defensive backs, and it didn't go over well, right? Marty was always respectful to guys, and it showed. This is why he has the coaching tree that he has, because he treated his coaches and his players like men, and why you see guys like Ron Zook that are no longer around, right? So that's the impact that Marty Schottenheimer has had on me, is the way he treated you as a man, and it showed when we went out there and played on the field every Sunday.
We'll kind of stick with Marty here. You guys had tough playoff losses. We'll get to those individually here in a little bit. But where were you? What do you remember the feelings, the thoughts of you and your teammates when you heard after the '98 season Marty's retiring? He's gone on, and little kind of ESPN things to say that that's one of his biggest regrets, kind of letting himself get so down about kind of the playoff failures and the '98 season not having the success that he expected, that kind of the league expected, and him kind of stepping away and Gunther kind of taking over.
Well, I mean, it was the biggest, it was the most devastating thing that I think happened to that organization, and I think we saw the impact of it for the next 10 plus years. That's the kind of impact that Marty Schottenheimer had on that organization, because God bless Gunther, and I learned a great deal from Gunther, but he wasn't Marty Schottenheimer, and there'll never be another Marty Schottenheimer. And so when he left, I mean, a lot went with him, and I mean, I think we're just now seeing this organization come back to the level that many people in Kansas City expect. But that was the kind of impact that Marty had, and it was tough to see him go, because I think he certainly left too soon.
Well, James, we talked about those playoff losses, obviously one of which being to the '95 to the Colts in a brutally cold game below temperatures. We've had Lynn Elliott on the show talking about it. Obviously, there's a lot of things that happened in that game that led to that, but it was heartbreaking for Chiefs fans, of course. And then in '97, Neil Smith goes to the Broncos, and it's another devastating home loss But this time it was different. You had Elvis Grbac coming back from injury. Rich Gannon had been on a roll. We've talked to a lot of people about this. Got to get your take. When Elvis Grbac comes back healthy, but you guys have been winning with Rich Gannon as a defensive player, were you guys wanting to stick with Gannon at that point? What was kind of the mindset of the defense at that point going into the playoffs in '97?
As a defensive captain, I can honestly say everybody wanted Rich Gannon. It was just, I mean, to say that your headset went out at the end of the game and you don't know what to call is why it speaks to why you needed Rich Gannon in there. Because you should know as a starting quarterback in the National Football League what to call if your headset supposedly goes out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we practice. That's why we go out to practice every day. And so the idea to say, hey, your headset went out, and so what? You don't know what to call? I mean, of course you should know what to call. You're supposed to be a top flight quarterback. You should know what to call. And so I think that was a calculated mistake. I think that it came down to this whole amount of money that they paid Elvis in free agency, and that whole deal. But you take a guy like Rich Gannon. I mean, no matter where Rich Gannon has gone, he's always been successful. He's always worked hard. He's he's an underachiever, but he's always been a winner. He's always had a very positive attitude, and that's why he's been successful. To have a guy like that, who I think he won several games for us, I'm going to say 4 or 5 games maybe, and now we're going to take him out of the lineup, I didn't agree with it.
Whose decision was that, if you're in the know there? A lot of people say it was Carl Peterson's, like you talked about. It's the contractor paying him this money. He's got to be in there. Some people say it's Marty. He didn't know quarterbacks. He said that starting quarterback can't lose his job to injury, so he put him back out there. So there's always been this back and forth. Was it Carl? Was it Marty? Was it a combination? What was going on, if you're in the know at all with that?
Well, I can say that I'm not in the know, but I can tell you based on my experience with Carl Peterson, and I talked to Carl not too long ago. Maybe Carl Peterson ran that organization. You can best believe that. Mm-hmm. And rightfully so. Carl Peterson was a hell of a general manager, and no one can ever take that from him. But I had my own contract issues with Carl Peterson, and it was based on some statements and commitments that were made to me. And it became real clear to me that the only person that makes the calls and decisions within that organization when it came to contracts was Carl Peterson. And if I'm a betting man, if I've got the opportunity to put Rich Gannon on the field and I know that it may not go over well with Carl Peterson, I'm probably going to put Elvis Grbac out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well,
but I think that in hindsight, and again, even during that time, I thought that Rich Gannon, the hell with everything else, I think Rich Gannon had the hot hand. I think you go with Rich Gannon.
Is it hard looking back on those years? I mean, you played on a defense with, you talked about him, Derrick Thomas, Neil Smith, Dan Seliamua, guys like Joe Phillips,
Hell yeah.
Pella McDaniels.
Yeah, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
95, Derrick Thomas, myself, and Marcus Allen went into the equipment room, closed the door, and turned the lights off and cried like babies.
Wow.
God.
We cried like babies, man. That hurt, man. That hurt.
And
okay, you missed 3 field goals. You missed 3 field goals. If you set a team down for less than 13 points, and you should win the football game.
Absolutely.
Any National Football League, if your defense stops a team and only gives up 13 points, you should win that football game.
Is there any feelings towards Marty Schottenheimer? We asked Mark Collins to be a part of the film, and he declined, and he still seems upset about that 95 game and how Marty not throwing the ball. There doesn't seem a lot of anger. I know a lot is pointed towards Lynn Elliott. Of course there is. He missed 3 field goals. I'm still angry at him. This whole town is. I'm not sure if he can ever come back here, but Steve Bono threw 3 interceptions as well. But Mark Collins seemed to point it towards Marty Schottenheimer and the offensive game plan. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Well, I mean, I guess, put it this way. When you see Derrick ready to kill Paul Hackett in the locker room, it was pretty clear it wasn't Marty making the calls.
Yeah.
It was Paul Hackett. I mean, let's not forget who Paul Hackett was.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we all were perplexed. I mean, when you see Derrick wanting to tear the guy's head off at halftime, he wasn't going after the quarterback. He was going after Paul Hackett.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're hired as an offensive coordinator to come in and make calls, and Marty can't call the plays. He's a head coach. He can make suggestions, but he's not calling the plays. So I disagree with Mark if he's saying that it was on Marty. My thing was it was Paul Hackett, and we missed field goals. And I think in light of that, a lot of people lost out on some great opportunities with their careers. I mean, we had the home field playoffs throughout, man. We're at home.
Well,
yeah,
you know,
that was a special time, a special team. We look back on that. Even if we win a Super Bowl now, just growing up as Chiefs fans throughout the 90s, if we win a Super Bowl with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, there's still going to be a part of me that looks back on that and like it's not as special as it would have been back then.
We let the city down. We let the city down, man. I didn't want to go through a rebuild, man. That city deserved a championship. You know what I'm saying? I played with a broken arm. Dale Carter played with a broken arm. Guys had cast. I mean, we were out there giving it up, and we wanted a championship, man.
Well, as someone that's been an ESPN analyst for college football and still following the game very closely, when you look at this organization now, you talked about how Marty resigning set the organization back 10 years. Well, here we are, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. What do you see from this? I mean, Patrick Mahomes, of course, comes in and sets the world on fire, wins the MVP, 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. What do you see? What do you see from him? What do you see from this current? Is this current Chiefs the team that's going to finally get this thing done here?
Yeah, I think the world of Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a hell of a talent. I've been keeping up with the Tyreek Hill situation. That's obviously not a very good looking situation. But I would tell you, if they can't learn how to play defense.
Yep.
If they can't learn how to put, you run a man in motion and nobody knows who's picking the guy up in motion.
Oh.
I mean, I'm sitting there watching that and I'm like, are you kidding me? No, I'm talking about the Charger game and I'm talking about the Patriot game.
Yep.
All they're doing is motioning Edelman and he's motioning behind a receiver and nobody knows who's got the guy. You practice that all day, every day. So how can you not know who's getting the ball? How does the Denver Broncos not know that Julian Edelman is getting the ball?
Yeah, it's been a source of frustration. It's unbelievable. It's kind of a reverse of what we had back in the 90s when the defense kind of carried the day. Now the offense certainly is.
Yes, exactly. Now it's flipped, right? It's flipped. And it's like, man, this young man is not going to be young forever. Pat Mahomes is not going to be young forever. Okay? He's just one injury away from devastating that whole organization. So we need to figure this out, defense.
Absolutely. We look at that back in the 90s with you guys and how just careers. I mean, we couldn't get a Super Bowl for all these great legendary players, yourself and Dale Carter and Derrick Thomas and Neil Smith, because the offense wasn't up to par. And now in 2003, and we had the great offense, and we let Trent Green, Tony Gonzalez, Priest Holmes down because we couldn't get the defense figured out. Now we still can't get the defense figured out. And are we going to waste Patrick Mahomes' career, not be able to get a Super Bowl there? So it's always been this. We cannot get both sides to mesh and play great football at one time.
Yeah. It's always interesting. I saw Tony Gonzalez make a statement about how the city of Atlanta, how much it meant to his career. I was insulted. I mean, are you kidding me? I know you're doing television and all now, but have you forgot about Kansas City? We can't be, because we're working for CBS now, we can't forget about Kansas City.
Yeah, Chiefs Kingdom was very upset about that at the time. I think they still are. You see people post stuff about Tony Gonzalez.
I'm livid, and I played with them. I'm livid because I played with them. And I know TG personally, and we've hung out personally, but that statement was not okay.
So,
I mean, it's for me, man, it's why I haven't been able to come back. I just have not been able to get over, these losses and the fact that we weren't able to get it done. And it's just, I'm not ready. I'm not in a place to really go and celebrate, hanging out with the fellas just yet. I'd like to see that city get a championship like none other, man. That's really what it's about for me.
Well, you would definitely be welcome back with open arms, James. I mean, there's a lot of us, we've been hosting this show for years. We've it's such a part of our lives and part of our upbringings. Those Chiefs teams of the 90s were literally it for us. And yeah, it didn't get done. You didn't get a Super Bowl, but like we hold you guys in such reverence. And that's why we sought out Dale Carter to do an interview with him. That's why we sought out Marty Schottenheimer to make this film about him. That's why we sought you out. There's a camaraderie there that's always going to exist. So I don't want you should never feel like that. This city doesn't embrace you guys because it certainly does. It was you guys were the only show in town for that whole decade.
Well, I mean, I want you guys to know I appreciate what you did for my career. The fans were fantastic, and I'll forever be indebted to the to the Kansas City organization and the Hunt family. I do know that there's some challenges that I've seen. I've talked to a guy like Danny Hughes, and I said, "Hey, Danny, if I came back, man, how do I go about getting into the game?" "Oh, well, you got to go buy a ticket." "Oh, I got to go buy a ticket?" "Oh, okay. You know what? I'd be better off sitting right here at home watching this game." I mean, the idea that a former player has to pay for a ticket to come to a Chiefs game is an insult. That's an insult. And as ambassadors, we should be able to do better than that. As an organization, we should be able to do better than that. That's the least that I would expect. That as former players, we should not be told, "Oh, here's the ticket prices if you'd like to come and watch a game."
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I look at that and we're wondering like, hey, why don't we see more players come through here? We see Chris Nicoy every once in a while bang the drum, Tony Gonzalez, Tony Richardson comes back for the Ring of Honor ceremony, but why aren't more players just brought through here? You see that in some of the other organizations, Green Bay Packers, where people are just brought in. And to be told that you have to buy a ticket is insane to me. That just this organization in the 80s was nothing. You had the Super Bowl run in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. They were down. You guys brought football back to Kansas City. Marty Schottenheimer, Carl Peterson, guys like yourself and Dale Carter, Derrick Thomas, Neil Smith. You brought football back to Kansas City, made this a football town again. And to be told that you guys have to buy a ticket is just asinine.
It's laughable. I'm very thankful for the opportunity. But I'll be damned if I'm going to buy a ticket. And I'm not in the Ring of Honor or whatever. So I'm sure Tony Gonzalez doesn't have to buy one, or Will Shields doesn't have to buy one, or T. Rich doesn't have to. But I'm not buying a ticket to come to a game. I'll sit at home and watch it on TV. And I'll root for the Chiefs. I'll always be rooting for them. But we can do better than that. We, as an organization, the Chiefs could do better than that.
Well, James, before I let you go, I kind of got to bring this up. Obviously, you've done a lot of things out there in Washington. You've worked for ESPN. You've done some, been a college football analyst. Just kind of talk about that because, what does kind of the game mean to you today? Obviously, sitting back and you still watch the Chiefs and the NFL, but as far as college, you've had sons that have played football and played college football. Obviously, Washington State and Washington has been in the college football playoff. Just kind of talk about the college game and kind of being an analyst for ESPN, talking about the college game kind of versus your time in the NFL. What's that been like for you?
It's been an evolutionary process. Learning the game, obviously inside the lines, and then watching them from the outside the lines. As a commentator, and then of course, moving into retirement and things of that sort, I start to see the game a lot different now. I mean, we're seeing issues with guys in terms of CTE and dementia, and it's really concerning to me the welfare of these young kids and the impact that the game could have on their careers and their lives. And so I've kind of taken I'm not as interested as much in the game anymore because it's kind of sobering now to see kind of how the NFL is treating former players when it comes to this concussion settlement that they're trying to resolve, where basically they're not trying to provide assistance to guys, and they being the owners know that the damage of the game has caused to people's lives, and so now for me it's changed. My views about the game have kind of changed because now it's life-threatening issues that we're talking about. If you're getting a $100 million, $200 million contract, well, you're going to be good for the rest of your life, right? But if you're a guy that played in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s that didn't make a whole bunch of money, well, your 2 years of medical coverage for your injuries is long gone. And so now the money that you saved from playing your playing days, you now need to use that money to pay for your health issues. And I'm disappointed that the NFL has taken the position that they have when it comes to trying to do more to help former players, because they know that the damage that the game has caused, and we can make the game safer. We don't have to take the position that, oh, we don't know, we didn't know about this stuff. Sure, you knew about it.
Yeah.
Let's own up to it and take care of the guys that got us to where these guys can get a couple $100 million contract, and take care of them, man. It's because it's just the right thing to do. Let's not turn a blind eye and say, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. Deny. Your neurological exam, your disability claim is denied. There's nothing wrong with you. When they knew that the information that they've had for years is all coming to light now. And let's just be honest with one another so that we can protect the next young generation of players. Let's do that so the game can continue. But if we continue to turn a blind eye and act like, oh, you guys are going to be fine for the rest of your life, if we don't do something to protect those former guys, then we're never going to get anywhere. We're going to jeopardize the game is what we're going to do. We're going to jeopardize the existence of the game, because insurance companies are going to stop insuring football if we don't figure out an alternative to protecting these young kids. This is reality. And when they won't insure you, now the only way you can play the game is if you're self-insured, and that's incredibly expensive. So people will stop playing the game of football.
Absolutely. It's the right thing to do. They have plenty of money there. Just a global empire the NFL is becoming, and the most popular sport in America. They have the money. It's the right thing to do. You guys lay it out there on the line. You guys are the product. You're why everyone tunes in. It needs to be done. And James, just one thing here. If the Chiefs can't do the right thing, if you ever change your mind and want to catch a game, and the Chiefs can't do the right thing, we here at the Great American Sports Network will do the right thing. We'll pay for your ticket, and we would love to have you come to a game with us.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I thank you guys for just reaching out to see how I'm doing and checking in. That was special, and I'm glad you guys did something for Marty, because I just texted Kurt, man, 2 days ago, and I said, Kurt, how is Marty doing? I said, let him know if he needs anything to let me know, and he said, man, I'll make sure to forward this text to Pat and him. I'm sure they'll love it. And I said, because in my mind, Marty Schottenheimer is a Hall of Famer, and that guy is truly a Hall of Famer to me. And so, that's what the game is meant to me. If I catch a game, whether it's in person or on TV, it's all good. At the end of the day, I still have love for Kansas City.
James, cannot thank you enough. It's been such a pleasure, and just best of luck with everything. We'll definitely stay in touch, my friend, and catch up soon, my man. Thank you again.
Okay, guys, take care.